I said, what are we going to do this week? And they would say, they would pick out things to do. They said, let's go to the Children's Museum. I said, what is that? And they said, it's a place where smaller children just can play, pretend, and build things, and visit things in the community and everything. And I said, well, are you older girls going to be bored there? And they said, it's okay, we'll watch the younger kids play. And so they had a lot of fun watching the young ones. And ever since then, I've been coming over here at every occasion.
Completely honest, when I first came to the museum, when I was asked to come here, I did not know anything about it, and I really just thought that it was a place to come for kids to play. And since then, I've learned that it's so much more. It's an opportunity for kids to grow and to develop and really learn a lot of life skills here.
This is going to be the bathroom. That's the bathroom. I need to find the plate. Your plate's over here.
So this just kind of felt like a home away from home, where I didn't have to clean up. They could do art and play with glue and crayons and markers and glitter and make a mess and just explore their creativity.
What happens is you get here and you say, oh, some kids will gravitate to one part and just stay there all day because that's their passion. They have a passion. And there are other kids that want to see it all and experience it all and do a little bit of everything.
It's always how it goes.
Does the baby sound okay? Oh my goodness.
The Greensboro Children's Museum is celebrating 20 years. That's 20 years of kids playing, exploring, growing, interacting, communicating, but most of all, making memories.
The idea of charitable giving, when my mother would raise money, people used to say, you give till it hurts. My mother always said, you give till it feels good. You give till you feel you've made a difference in someone's life. And I know my pop did that here, and it just makes me really proud. My brother and sister and I were raised with the idea, don't just complain, suggest a better way. And my blessed mother helped start Head Start in Greensboro, worked with Women's Resource Center. She was real active. She was president of Elliott Hall when she was at WC, which is UNCG. And I'd heard 100 times of my mother saying, this is terrible, someone should do something about it. And she did. So my brother and sister and I got it from both ends, that we were raised by parents that saw possibilities and just, again, saw the responsibility to make the world a better place, to repair the world. In the Jewish faith, the idea of charity, the Hebrew word is called tzedakah. You may have heard that before. And some people describe it as charity, but it really translates to responsibility, to obligation. So it's your obligation to make the world a better place. And when I look around at this magnificent museum, I know Pop did.
This is the story of one man's dream to build the Children's Museum here in downtown Greensboro. Jerry Hyman was born here in Greensboro New Year's Day, 1924. He grew up on Walker Avenue and later moved to Hobbs Road to raise 3 children. And it was there that he tried to create the best possible childhood for them.
Tell you about my dad is like my favorite topic to talk about. He loved Greensboro. He loved being here. He was very proud. He had an immigrant father. My grandfather, Aaron, came over from Lithuania and basically had nothing. Ended up with a shoe repair store and a furniture store on South Elm Street. And Dad was very partial to downtown and loved it. Very involved in kids with my older brother, younger sister. Particularly was a scoutmaster of our Boy Scout troop.
Through his abilities as a home builder, he built life-size props for his kids to play on.
And he built a little airplane in our front yard, in the woods in front of our yard, a little airplane for us to sit in and play. It was off the ground. He built a life-size dollhouse for my sister, for her and her friends to play in.
It was perhaps here that we could notice the early spark of a children's museum.
And in 1987, my brother and dad had been at Southeast Asia for a trip, and they had a long layover in San Francisco. And they went to the Exploratorium in San Francisco, and my dad's world changed, because as he looked around and saw the kids of all colors and sizes and shapes playing, he said, we have to have this for downtown Greensboro. Now, in 2019, that sounds like that's a reasonable ask, but back in the day, back in 1987, downtown Greensboro was nothing to talk about. And there was very little development in restaurants, and there were no young people coming downtown. And no families would come downtown because there was nothing to do.
The downtown died for a period in 1970s. It was, you could go down Elm Street and hardly run into anybody. Cars weren't, you didn't see any cars hardly parked on the street. And it really had its last breath, I thought, in 1979 when the fire department left downtown. And I said, good gosh, what's a city with a downtown without a fire department?
When we couldn't see it coming, but we lost a lot of textile corporate headquarters. We lost a lot of furniture companies. The region, not just Greensboro, but we lost 90,000 jobs net within about an 8-year period. And then we had a little rally in the early 80s when the Marriott Hotel was built over on North Elm Street, and between North Elm and Green, and another office building, it's kind of a blue tinted window office building, that was built. Everybody had their hopes up. They were coming back. Who would have ever thought Burlington Industries, the largest textile company in the world, with 120,000 employees in 80 different plants all over the world, would end up being a shopping center? So that was not a very happy period.
And so Dad latched onto this idea, and he would not let go. And anyone he talked to said, this can't be done. You can't do it maybe in Charlotte, maybe in Raleigh, but you can't do it in Greensboro. And Dad persisted and pushed and looked. He owned a building, the former Montgomery Ward building, which is now the Pearl Theater on South Elm Street. And that actually became the site of the first Children's Museum because Dad donated that. So that was the first donation to start the Greensboro Children's Museum. And Dad tried to raise money and raise interest and really hit a wall. And then he partnered with Miss Cynthia Doyle.
Cynthia Doyle grew up in Rochester, Minnesota. In 1954, she moved to Greensboro with her husband, Dr. Owen Doyle, and their 2 sons. She started her volunteer work with Travelers Aid to help visitors come to Greensboro. From there, she helped start several nonprofit organizations in the community, including United Daycare Services, which helped low-income women get childcare, and child abuse prevention services.
Cynthia was the mother of all good things in Greensboro. Cynthia started Reading Connections, she started the Community Foundation. She was just an incredible source of energy and great ideas, smart, could make it happen. If you needed something to happen, Cynthia Doyle was your woman. And so I knew Cynthia just through my contacts through the Chamber and Leadership Greensboro, and really was in awe of Cynthia. So when Cynthia asked you to do something, you stood up, raised your hand, and said, I'd be happy to help. She just had that kind of power and energy, and she was a force.
Did you ever know her?
I did.
Wonderful person.
I had an opportunity.
She started the Community Foundation. And she came to see Roger Soules and me. I was head of First Home at the time. She said, you know, we should have started this 10 years ago.
And if I remember the story correctly, and it's been a while, she turned Jerry Hyman down 3 or 4 times before she said she would take on the Children's Museum. And I remember him being very persistent. He had to have Cynthia Doyle on this project. He wanted her to be involved. And so he called her. He wouldn't give up. He wouldn't give up. So I like that about him. And Cynthia really, my understanding and what I've learned about, what I knew about her, she never took anything on unless she could give 100%. So she felt like she was a little tapped at that time and didn't think she could give it that 100 or 110% like she does all her projects. And I don't know if Jerry finally wore her down or she finally just said, I'm going to do it because I love it.
Yeah, in 1993, I went through Leadership Greensboro with Cynthia Doyle as the leader, and it really sort of changed my life. I really enjoyed it, and I often suggest to other people they enroll in that program because it talks about, I'd always been a John Wayne kind of leader, making my own decisions without a lot of input. And what I found after that, being involved in Leadership Greensboro, was that the best decisions are made out of collaboration. And the more people you involved in the decision-making process, the better outcome you normally have. And so Leadership Greensboro sort of changed my life.
She did say, if I remember, this was going to be her last project, and I held her to that because I didn't want her to take on anything new as long as I could keep her involved, or we, I shouldn't say I apologize, but as long as we could keep her involved in the museum, because she was, she was just that great advocate and great person for the museum. And she loved everything that was what we did, so, yeah.
Jerry was larger than life. He was amazing. I'll never forget that first meeting at Cynthia's house where he pulled out hundreds of photographs that he had taken from all over the world of different children's museums. Everywhere he went, he would stop and take photographs and bring them back, and he was so excited about this, but he wanted it to happen right then, that moment. And he did not have the skill set to bring a group together and to do the fundraising like Cynthia did. So with Cynthia's help, providing the process and the contacts, Jerry with the ideas and the initiative and the initial funding from that building, we were able to put it together to go forward.
The partnership of Jerry Hyman and Cynthia Doyle began moving paper to pavement and brought a dedicated team of folks made up mostly of parents together to collaborate upon this astounding and unique effort in downtown Greensboro.
And she gathered up some good people, including Kathy Black, who was the marketing director, and she was a real go-getter. I worked with her a lot, quoted her a lot in stories, and she was outstanding.
I had retired from having my own marketing business, and I got a letter from Cynthia Doyle that she said, saying, we're considering starting a children's museum, and would you be interested coming to an inaugural meeting at my house? And I had a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I was constantly looking for really quality things for them to do in Greensboro, and it's just what Greensboro needed. I was like, sure, I'm happy to come to a meeting. And we met in Cynthia Doyle's living room, and she had rounded up people from Leadership Greensboro, graduates of Leadership Greensboro, other volunteers she knew, and here we tromped in and met in her living room and started brainstorming how we could start a children's museum.
A lot of people had visited children's museums on their travels to other parts of the United States or even in North Carolina, up and down the East Coast, and the excitement to have their own children's museum in Greensboro was just huge. We had a lot of that kind of feedback. Wow, we'd love to have something like that here in Greensboro. And so that continued, that momentum, that excitement, helped us, just kept us propelled and moving forward to make sure this project got done.
And once we all started delving into what a children's museum could be, we were all on board. Because the word museum, it does belie what incredible hands-on learning takes place at a children's museum. So there we started. We started brainstorming in Cynthia's living room. We came up with our mission. We started doing our research. We hired a consultant to talk to us about, how a children's museum could work here. We hired an executive director.
And so one of the things we did to kind of show what a children's museum is we brought in an exhibit from, I think it was Boston Children's Museum. It was all about construction. I think it was called Three Little Pigs, if I remember right, and it talked about how everything was built, how houses were built, lights, electricity, water, and everything. and put that in a building on South Elm Street, set that up, opened it up to the public for over a month.
Jim Melvin and the Bryan Foundation saw the school buses stopping in the middle of Elm Street to kind of let children out. And he came to us after a while and said, you know, I like what you're trying to do, and you know, we want to help you, but I'm not sure this is the location for you.
It wasn't going to work. You can't put a children's museum on a 3-story building. Elevator, stairs, and you were going to have to park somewhere else and walk to it. It's what I said about people vote with their feet. It wouldn't have been long until the Children's Museum was not growing. So we said no.
The Gate City Motor Company was founded in 1914 by C.W. Edwards. Located on the 200 block of East Market Street, across from the King Cotton Hotel.
Well, Gate City was the parking facility for the King Cotton Hotel, really. All their clientele parked their cars there. And during the war, we had a gas pump, but to buy gas, you had to have a ration book. And with Gate City could take your stamps and sell you gasoline, but there were very little bit of that done.
David Brown's father, Paul Brown, ended up working for C.W. Edwards Sr. in 1928.
And it was there for a number of years, and then later moved down on Forbes Street in a property owned by Mr. Kellenberger, who had a duplex auto facility. We were on one side, which is now Friendly Avenue coming through Church Street, and the other side of the dealership was Galloway Buick. It was a nice facility, but the city was going to eventually, they were going to run Gaston Street and make it Friendly Avenue all the way through town.
And in 1953, the dealership ended up moving to 300 North Forbes Street, now 220 North Church Street. The dealership also expanded across the street to what is now the Greensboro Public Library.
My thoughts were we were going to expand and take on other franchises. And we bought property from the city, which was the Gate City Lincoln Mercury operation. And that building was built in 1984. I said the place to have it would have been out on near where the Coliseum, that area on Lee Street or on Wendover Avenue. And they said, well, how about putting up a building out there? I said, you put it up and we'll manage it for you. But it didn't work out. And we sold our Chrysler Plymouth franchise to Carson Rice Sr. And he took the franchise and put it out on Wendover, where his daughter operated Marco Rice dealership out there. And we then had an empty building, which was empty for several years.
You know, I happened to be over there one day at the Lincoln place because I had a Lincoln car and a Lincoln SUV, and the rest of that story, as Paul Harvey would say, that's the rest of that story. So, and we put that deal together in less than a week.
Really wanted the Children's Museum to come about, and so we, in conjunction with the Bryan Foundation, they put up about half the value of the property, and we got a tax credit for the rest of it. That's how the Children's Museum came into existence, and we have supported them then and still do. I think it's a great asset for Greensboro, a wonderful asset.
Is it any wonder that the Greensboro Children's Museum took the idea of hands-on learning, while the history and essence of the Gate City Motor Company should live and breathe within this very building? And now it's 1999, and a date is set in mid-May for the opening of the Greensboro Children's Museum.
The planning had to restart for that new space, and that was probably the most challenging part, because we were pretty far into design when we changed locations. And although I agree that the new location is far superior for a children's museum, because it's all on one level, and it was a great match for what the Children's Museum is today.
And it was a better idea. It had parking, it had a lot of room.
When we first came to see it, and other people will tell you this, Melanie, Souls, we all came to look at it. There was an oil pit in the back. It was, it took a little vision, but it was a huge building.
We already had a water exhibit coming down that wall over there with the roof leakage over there. We had a construction exhibit back there with things that were left in the dealership and what was going on. We had a nature exhibit with birds that were flying through the museum, through this facility, through this building right here. So
yeah, it was in pretty rough shape, as any building that sits vacant for a while becomes. But yeah, it was an old auto service center, and back then the service centers were not very nice. They had just concrete floors that were greasy, and they had oil pits, and we actually repurposed that oil pit in the construction exhibit. That's like the basement of the house is that oil pit. But yeah, it was in pretty rough shape. Had a lot of some leaking, and
that when we walked in here, and I think there were a couple people who said, it's never going to happen. So that was an interesting sort of sideline as well, because then we had to start saying, oh yeah, it is. We're gonna help you picture what this is going to look like.
I don't have a problem seeing the future in a building, and that's one of my gifts. Is that I walked in, and the first thing I thought, this is going to be awesome. And it didn't bother me at all that of what I was seeing, because I know that we could repair all those flaws and defects. And I was excited to see such an expansive space that was, for the most part, all on one level. And it would be a very collaborative space and a great learning experience for kids.
We had lifts, big old huge lifts that that didn't work anymore, hydraulic lifts that you think about that you just couldn't. I mean, we had to pull them out, and in many cases the whole hydraulics had to be re-engineered so they could get them out and move them out of the building. I remember those big massive things.
Yeah, I want to say we started in December and had to be finished by May 15th, and that was tough because, as I said, we changed venue, so the plans had to be restarted for this new building. And it's not like you could really take any of the plans from the old building and reuse them on this building. You had to start from scratch. So that was, and the date had been set a year in advance for May 15th of '99, and there was no moving the date.
I was the co-chair of the opening gala that night, and if you had been here the day before opening day, I'm sure that other people have reminisced on this as well. You would say there was no way we were opening. I believe that John Lomax and his crew and all the volunteers and all the professionals worked 24/7 for at least a week to get this ready for opening day. It was so exciting just to see everybody in here and running around, and the sense of magic and awe that we were bringing to Greensboro was just tremendous.
I lost a kid that joked at the time about losing a couple years of my life to that project, because it was a 24/7 project, and we worked really hard. A lot of changes were being made throughout the process,
but just did an amazing job to put all this together and open our doors. Worked with 2 different architect firms here in Greensboro, which I don't know if was a first, but it might have been pretty close to the first, because I know architects are pretty competitive for their business, and we actually had 2 firms here in Greensboro working together.
You know, I will say that I think, again, because it was a community project, the cooperation from all the people involved was something I wasn't really used to. It was a very positive and proactive group of people that made things happen, and they were not going to let a problem or a change stop them. And it was really one of the best projects I've ever worked on. As I mentioned earlier, we had changes right up until the last minute, and one of the main features, the helical steel structure, was supposed to be right in front of the doors of the museum, and 3 or 4 days before the opening. I just remember as the cars were pulling in for the grand opening, the concrete trucks were rolling out because we had just finished the concrete that afternoon. And but that was, that's one of the memories that sticks in my mind.
From the very beginning, I think our group was unanimously agreed that this museum would be different from other museums. At that time, there was a lot of children's museums coming on board, and they were somewhat cookie cutter. The postal car would be fabricated, this would be fabricated, the police car would be a fake police car, and we wanted our museum to be very authentic. And from the main street, we wanted all those experiences to be things that children might really do with their parents on a regular basis. And with the fire truck and the police car and the petty race car, those things set us apart from the very beginning, rather than just having a cookie cutter fabricated exhibit. The other thing that enabled us to do was to have some really cool things in there for not as much money. We were able to build this museum probably 3 times less than any other museum was being built in the country.
Timco, I think it was Timco at the time. They've gone through a name change or 2, but we went out and talked to them, and they were big in aviation here in Greensboro, and Greensboro has a pretty significant history of transportation, so that was a piece that we thought would be nice to bring in. So we were looking at Greensboro with aviation being the gate city, trains, and that sort of, kind of the center point in North Carolina. And so talking to Timco and asking them if they could donate and or provide that cockpit. So they said they would do that and kind of helped us on the upfit and kind of bringing some other things in as well. So I remember they're loading that up on a truck and bringing that down, and of course street lights were too low in other places, or turns were too tight, and we had just an amazing truck driver bring it down there and load, actually
gathered around that back. We couldn't finish building the lighthouse exhibit until the cockpit, until the plane came in, because it was huge. It's not like it can fit through a door. And so, oh my gosh, a bunch of media were there that day as the cockpit came in. We thought it was the coolest thing ever.
And that was a spectacular day because we stopped traffic on, I don't remember if it was Market or Friendly, bringing that down to the museum. That was kind of exciting, and we had police escorts and people spotting it along the way and sending us pictures.
I would guess it's about midway through the project, and we ended up finishing the museum around them because they were such large pieces. We couldn't get them into the building any other way other than to put them in and then install the glass storefronts, the glass windows on the exterior of the building after they were in the space. So we finished the project around those 2 pieces of equipment.
People had different contacts, and we were just reaching out everywhere with the fire department, with the police department, the airplanes. We wanted things to be very symbolic to our area, thus the airplane with the airport and everybody involved with airplane repair here. Since then, you have the Volvo truck, but the fact that we were able to get those real equipment in here was it really made a big difference.
I remember we got the NASCAR donation, and from Kyle Petty. So that was a fun piece to have the NASCAR in the museum. And then we created a relationship with A&T, North Carolina State A&T, with their NASCAR shop. So we had some of their students come out and look at the car and kind of help.
The night before the opening, just about everything was in place, or so they thought.
You want to know how Tim Getz spent the night? You need to ask him this. The night of our gala, he couldn't figure out how, ask him, I'm trying to remember, how to lock the doors.
We had a great, just wonderful night. All of us were exhausted, and I was thinking about, all right, I'll probably have to be the last person here and need to make sure all the doors are locked. We had no keys to this place.
And we had all, we had to clean up after the gala. We all were still hands-on. I mean, we were like throwing away, cups. We were getting caters out of here. And he could not, I went home. I did not know this. And I was one of the last ones to leave.
I had no idea who had them, but all doors were unlocked everywhere because we were using every part of this museum. And so I called my wife and I said, I think I'm gonna have to spend the night at the museum. I didn't know what else to do. So I made sure all the doors were closed, and I found a blanket and a pillow from somewhere and ended up sleeping my first night underneath a desk in a room off here.
I can't leave this place unlocked. I mean, we've spent too much time. Nothing can happen.
Not that I don't know what I would have done if someone would have come in, but I was afraid to leave, so I spent the night, and then next morning I was up early and we're getting ready for the opening to the public. But that's exactly. And then that day I called the contractor. I called somebody and we got some keys.
The day of the opening was met with many nervous hearts and minds, lots of anticipation, and some last-minute touches.
Said before, we were pushing piles of debris, cleaning up this building as we were welcoming people in the front door.
But I remember coming in and the lighting was dramatic. They had a lot of spotlights on things. The colors were bright and primary and fresh, and it was so much fun to have a party where there were refreshments and cocktails and things, and you got to go through all the exhibits and play in them and visit with your friends and check it out. And so it was all brand new and fresh, and so it was such a reveal and unveiling. And I thought I had understood what it was all about, but when I came that night, I just remember this amazing wow.
But that night when everything was in place and all the exhibits were ready and all the props were there and it was shining and pretty and exciting, I cried like a baby. Just too much time. We spent so much volunteer time and effort. I was just really happy. Look at me, I get emotional talking about it. From everybody.
I was there because of the press. And I remember just walking through there and seeing there was a fire truck in there. And it was a big crowd there just milling about, adults. But all the exhibits were there and you could look at them, touch them, and that was one of the theories behind the museum was hands-on. Nothing, you had to look behind glass to see. But the who's who of Greensboro came for the grand opening. I mean, Jim Melvin and Cynthia Doyle and all the people that were responsible for raising the money for the museum. And that great food, I remember the food was really good. They had the food at different places in the museum. And that was really good. It was just a very festive occasion.
Lord, we hope people show up. And they did, in droves. And that's when we were like, oh my gosh, we need some more staff. Because a lot of this place, it was all running on volunteers and like 2 paid staff members to start with. So it was all volunteer based to begin with. So they came in the door and we were like, oh my gosh, here we go. So it was exciting for all of us.
you learn very quickly what pieces will hold up and what won't. That's one thing by using fabricators. They generally build for the children's wear and tear. Sometimes some of our pieces didn't make it that long. They have now since been replaced. But it was just wonderful seeing everybody running around, and the adults too. We were as excited as the children, and have been in each phase of the museum. The garden, the new exhibits. Every time there's a new exhibit, we get so excited.
Woo! 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 Woo!
It's actually bottle time. Auntie went to go warm his bottle. I'm surprised he's not screaming.
The Children's Museum.
Actually, this is our second time.
How have you enjoyed it?
We love it. We brought our first grandson, our 8-year-old, here. This is his first visit. And he's 8 months. This is his first visit. So we're going to break him in.
And what have y'all like your kids been on around here so far?
Well, he's enjoyed this, and my grandson loves the outside climbing structure and all the fire trucks and the trucks and stuff. He loved that. That was his favorite. And the grandma's house. Yeah.
Missions. The Greensboro Children's Museum mission statement: to engage all children and families in hands-on, fun learning experiences which contribute to their growth and development through play, creation, outdoor exploration, and STEM experiences.
As we started the museum, we decided we really needed to have a mission and that we were going to try to stick to our mission. And that was to provide a hands-on learning environment. We wanted it to be fun for children, but we also wanted it to be educational. So every exhibit that we looked at had to have that hands-on experiential learning, component to it. And so as part of that process, we decided on an Our Town theme. And we wanted children to be able to come to the museum and experience their town, like what might be in their town, but in a way that they could understand it and be a part of it.
We wanted to make this a community project, so we spent, I don't know how many Saturday school fairs and events I did, from blowing bubbles all across the Greensboro to garden clubs I went to in Burlington, all across Greensboro as well, down to High Point, schools I spoke to, youth groups I spoke to, or Cynthia and I spoke to, or Jerry and I spoke to, those sort of things. So we really kind of went really grassroots on this one. We wanted everyone to say this was their children's museum. It was their project and they were involved.
I think parents were kind of in awe when they first came in the door. And we encouraged parents to participate with their children and in experiencing this place. And we also encouraged parents to let their children do their thing, like spend as much time as they wanted. Like sometimes parents tend to drag children from place to place. Okay, we've been in the grocery store long enough, let's go see this. And we really encourage parents to kind of let their children experience it as they wanted to.
There's everything in the world here for children to play with, to learn about. I was just amazed. And then kind of the biggest thing is when and now it's a different spot in the museum, we kind of went to what is not even transportation anymore, but once we went to the area where there was a police car, a fire engine, an airplane, I was like, holy cow. I, as an adult, had never had the opportunity to really get in on a fire truck or in a police car. And I remember asking the person that toured me around, can I go in there? And they were like, of course. And after that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best place in the world. Who would not love to be here all the time?
Kids thought the fire alarm was an exhibit piece. And so at 9:30, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, the fire alarm would go off, and we'd find out that some kid didn't realize that it was a real fire alarm. So, but it was really cool because the fire department had to come So it was like, all right, everybody, let's go outside. The fire department's here. You know, let's see if we can get them to stay for a while, and you can ask them questions, and maybe they'll let you climb on the truck and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, we turned it into something positive.
Their children might be interested in, but then we just encourage them to play with their children. I saw many a man go down that chute from the air, you know, from the airplane. I saw a lot of parents in the back of that police car. So trust me, I think some of the parents had just as much fun playing as the children.
The museum was done like in 2 rings, and the interior ring of exhibits was for the youngest children, like the littles, toddlers, and up to maybe 3, and then, or maybe 4. And then the outer ring of the museum was set up for a little bit older children. So it was a great concept, and you could see across both. So if you were a parent with multi-age children, you know, kids can engage in everything, and you could kind of still have your eye on them.
That was pre the small walls. I forgot about that, because we put those in after the fact because we couldn't keep some of the older kids out of the toddler area because they liked everything in there and they thought it was cool. So we built we had those built, and the gates. Yeah, I forgot about.
And it was filled with colorful cushions, things that the smallest children could pull themselves up on, and there was often this almost scream of delight when either the staff was talking about mom and dad seeing their children take their first steps, because it was just that ability in this safe zone to pull themselves up onto these little cushions, and then there was another colorful one 2 or 3 feet away, and they'd launch themselves and take their first steps.
A grocery store, we had a theater, we had the fire truck, we had the airplane. Those are all things they see in their community. We had Noni's house, so that's like grandma's house. We had a construction zone. So it all had to do with their town.
Yeah, oh, there's that sand that got everywhere. That was one of the things that, you know, from the coast to the mountains, they have a replica of the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. It was really supposed to poke out of the building. It was supposed to be much more grandiose, but, you know, I got vetoed on that one.
Do you know how to crack an egg?
Yeah.
How do you crack an egg? Can you show us?
This?
Good job!
He likes the train room and the room with all the vehicles in it the best. Those are his 2 favorite places. The girls liked the medical and dental and the house. We just love it. I bring family members whenever I can. When I first walked in here, I realized that this was one of those places where I would like to play. Still at my age.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I guess that makes it fun.
It does make it fun. I know, but they're getting ready to close the doors on us.
It's closed.
This is always
I had fun though.
The Greensboro Children's Museum offers an active schedule of programs designed to provide enriching educational experiences for children of all ages. All programs are themed around science, technology, art, music, dance, food, gardening. Pop-up programs are free with admission and give visiting families an opportunity to engage in short-term, structured activity. Paid programs offer in-depth exploration of a topic and is led by experienced educators.
I just remember it growing and growing and growing and growing, and every aspect of the museum growing. Attendance, membership, birthday parties, yes, birthday parties growing.
And then it was also touched by professionals. We had early childhood development professionals talking to us, counseling us, coaching us on things that weren't, I guess, normal for us. I didn't understand how fine motor skills and color recognition and matching skills and all the things that are part of the play to learn. That wasn't part of a financial guy's vocabulary, but we were making decisions about which exhibits were going to go into our museum, and we wanted to do it with a thoughtful approach. So the folks at UNCG stepped up and helped us, and then again, so many folks on the board over those years were so impactful.
Many people come here for the first time when they go to a summer camp or maybe even a birthday party. Our summer camps consistently sell out every year, and because they're just these amazing opportunities to flex your curiosity and your creativity, and you can learn to cook or to garden or to make believe in ways that you didn't ever think possible. And so those are a really great kind of starting point for a lot of people to come into the museum.
Programming is where you get the change, the variety. You get different experiences every time you come. Otherwise, children are coming in and they're playing with the same equipment, the same exhibits, and you've got to have the programming, you've got to have things that change. And that's where a lot of the educational components come in too.
And then a lot of our children, as they spend more time playing here, want to get involved with a lot of our classes, and we offer classes. Well, we offer classes in robotics and STEM, and then we have cooking classes. We have make and do classes where they are going into the garden and they're learning about bees, and then they're coming back and making candles or lip balm, and sewing sometimes, and again, then taking robots and coding these robots to move in certain ways or to light up in certain ways.
And the garden is a programming tool. It is not just a garden. It is strictly to teach children from farm to fork, the whole process of food evolution and health and wellness as well. Health and wellness is now part of the museum's mission, where it wasn't specifically in the very beginning.
We've been coming here since, for a year and a half at least. We've been coming since my son was, he's 4 now, so since he was like 1, but really coming since he was 3, since he's been doing the classes.
And tell me about the classes.
Oh, he loves them. So his teacher's Miss Heather, and he's like super attached to her. And every 6 weeks they do throughout the year, not in the summer though, they do like a different theme. Right now they're in art explorers, and they're learning about colors, always bringing home like a project. They do nature beats, which is like music. They're always doing something new, and he loves it. And I'm gonna put her in next year when she's 3.
Let me you swing a little happy.
Oh, no thank you. oh, and then he drew a snail.
In accordance with keeping things fresh and new, different ideas came about to keep up with new trends. One of those ideas was the Edible Schoolyard.
So that was the vision of Melanie Souls. Melanie was about to become chair. She decided she was going to bring this idea in front of the board and was convinced it could work. We had had other discussions about how to expand. There was one idea at one point in time where we were talking about a skating rink here, a skateboard rink. And we looked at that, and it was more of a concrete, it was the exact opposite, because if you think of skateboarding, it's more like a concrete jungle, right? And so eventually we decided the liability risks were a little too high for that particular endeavor. So Melanie comes in with the exact opposite and says, well, why don't we create a garden? But she was extremely passionate about it. She had gone to Alice Waters' restaurant in California, and she really was the engine.
Everyone who knows me knows what a foodie I am, if that's a real word. A lover of food, a lover of the slow food movement. And Alice Waters, with her Chez Panisse restaurant in Berkeley, California, was the godfather, the soul mother of slow food. And she brought the whole concept of farm to fork to restaurants and into our schools. The Martin Luther King Jr. School in Berkeley is the first edible schoolyard in the country, supported by the Chez Panisse Foundation. And at the time that we were exploring this idea, I was in love with Alice Waters and the whole concept, and flew out there to meet her staff and to see the school and to see the garden and see the teaching components several times. And as it evolved, I was one of those Jerry Hyman-like people. I wanted it right now. I could raise the money, I thought, but I wanted it right now. And one of the first people I met with was Skip Moore with the Weaver Foundation. And I told him I had the greatest idea ever, and I knew he would support it. And surprisingly, he said, I didn't know health and wellness was in your mission. It needs to be. Before you raise money, before you move forward, it needs to be a part of your museum's mission. So he paid for a very good consultant out of Minneapolis to come and work with us. And we reworked the entire museum's mission to include health and wellness. And then we're able to move forward with the fundraising and a business plan. Alice told us that we had to have a business plan for the garden before they would accept our visit. They probably get 2,000 inquiries a month to visit that garden. So I called their director back and we had the business plan, we had a junior league funding, we had the Weaver Foundation funding, and we were on our way and they accepted us. And I told Alice at that visit that we were going to be the first children's museum to have an edible schoolyard in the country. And that's what we did. We teaching everything from harvesting to planting to growing to feeding to cooking. And you may only have one little plot of zucchini, but that's an example of what you can do and how you do it. And then when you go in the kitchen, you have other local organic produce that is from nearby farmers to supplement what you have here in the garden.
A hands-on, half-acre organic teaching garden and kitchen classroom. Since its grand opening in May 2010, the Edible Schoolyard has been a destination for children, families, and teaching to learn about growing, cooking, and sharing fresh, delicious food. With an ecosystem of plants and animals, the garden features fresh vegetables, herbs, fruits, flowers, trees, and shrubs, as well as chickens, worms, and insects. August 2015, the Reaching Greater Heights campaign was launched with a $3 million goal to add new areas and refurbish several existing. New areas included an outdoor play plaza with state-of-the-art climbers, outdoor patio classroom, installation of public art, new family snack area, nursing room, interactive interior water feature, and technology stations featuring coding, robotics. Renovated areas included the main entrance and lobby, refurbished restrooms, gift shop area, and a new Neptune lobby.
We just needed some resources to kind of fulfill our vision that we had, and we had a great capital campaign and fundraising efforts. And as you can see now, we have Reaching Greater Heights has come full circle, and we have some great exhibits from it.
Well, so the Phillips Foundation actually came to us, and Elizabeth Phillips, and she said, I want you to think big. What is something big that you would like to do? And so we did a little research and looked around at other children's museums and found out that the two big draws to Children's Museum are climbers and water features, both of which we didn't have here. And so we said, you know what, we want to do that, and we think we can do it in the biggest, best way possible. And so the staff was amazing and did a great job doing all this research and found these climbers, these Neptune climbers, which are some of the biggest outdoor play equipment in the world. And at the time, there were only 7 of them in the entire world and 2 in the US, and no 2 in one place.
Climbers outside, let's find something that's architecturally interesting. We wanted to do our part. Downtown is growing a lot more. Mr. Melvin talked about how when we opened there wasn't that much here, but now we have LeBauer Park and there's more and more people downtown, and so we thought, well, what can we do to add to the vibrancy? So we wanted some climbers that would be architectural, landscapes. A part of the town. And so we found these great ones that give kids multi-chances to climb. You just don't go from point A to point B. You have to make decisions and figure how you're going to go and navigate your course. And so that really added into all of our learning objectives and what we wanted for kids.
And so we said, you know what, we want to have 2 in this right here on the Children's Museum campus, and they're going to be connected by this tunnel that way off the ground, and they're going to be the only 2 connected climbers of this size in the whole world. And that was pretty exciting, not only to us, but to a lot of donors in our community who really stepped up to make it happen.
So that's my new favorite for my 10-year-old. So he's been out there most of the day. I've been out there quite a bit watching him, and yeah, that's fantastic. He's actually climbing right now. So I can see him, he's at the very top. So he loves that outside playground. That's fantastic. So great new addition.
So, well, we have lots of plans for the future. We want to see this place just grow in terms of bringing more visitors here so more children and families can enjoy this, I call it an oasis of childhood, and explore the garden. We're on a wonderful spot in downtown Greensboro, and things are growing all around us, and we want to continue our partnership with the library and the parks and the historical museum and all the other great amenities that downtown Greensboro has to offer.
My children are 12 and 11, and I've been bringing them here since they were probably 5 and 6 years old, and so that's definitely a period of time where a child changes, and I think their view of the museum changes. And so they loved it when they were little, and then they grew up a little bit and they like iPads and they like iPhones. But with the changes we've done with Reaching Greater Heights, I've brought them back, and they're back into being in love with the museum.
Hamza's favorite thing is maps, so this is really cool. This is something new. Where else do you want to go? Pick another state. What's that? What state is that? Alaska? All right, well, what about Alaska? Sophia, stay close. Alaska is also called the last frontier. Let's go to Florida. Here. All right, Florida is the Sunshine State, and its capital is Tallahassee. Look, and they have a state bird. It's the northern mockingbird. Let's learn about our state. Click on our state. Click the little red button. All right, North Carolina is the old North State. Our capital is Raleigh. Guess what our state bird is?
Well, it's changed a lot in 17 years, so obviously, you know, we love it now, and I think the vehicles are our all-time favorite, like the police car and the fire engine, and then the big Mack truck that the kids can go climb in. So that's been a staple, I feel like, for as long as we've been here. But the water table is new, and that's a huge hit every time we're here. So we love that. We get wet, but
not really. I mean, I just seriously am so grateful to the people that came before us and made this happen, and the leadership of the museum before me for having the smarts and the fortitude, you know, and the perseverance and passion that made this happen, and that it's now here for Greensboro, and that they put us in this great shape. I'm grateful to Mr. Melvin that he said this museum needs to be here. I love that Jerry Hyman went to San Francisco and saw a children's museum and came back to Greensboro and kept saying, we gotta have this. Our city needs this. Our city needs this. And that Cynthia Doyle said, yes, I will help you with it. She eventually said yes. So, my biggest thing is really a thank you to all those people that had that vision and that dream and passion, so that we're sitting here now talking about the great things.
Again, Paul's vision was you pick up a big wad of paper and drop it on a table, and what would you have? And so that's my son's artwork from first grade. Absolutely blew me away, because I didn't remember at the time to saying I want to wow in Pop's memory. And you look at Green Eggs and Ham, Sam I Am, my son's name is Sam. That's my daughter Danielle's artwork up here. You see Bugs Bunny sticking his tongue out. If you come down to the corner, there's Mickey Mouse. So there's just all sorts of interactive stuff when you're here that you see it. Piece of trivia, the Pokemon card is upside down. Paul initially had it the other way, and his son pointed it out after he finished the piece. This was Nintendo. This is kind of the most high-tech thing in there. And then, like I said, the Wizard of Oz, which you got the poppies, and this is a piece for Pop, and there's Greensboro, the Emerald City, and so you kind of almost see something new. This wrapping paper is from the 70s as well. So again, it just was a real tribute to childhood. And it's really cool when I come here and see it. He would be so proud.